Zoom shut off and then they like disappeared. Like today's the day of just deep breathing through Zoom gremlins.
Okay, Chairwoman, you may take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Clerk. Can we please do roll call?
Chair Susan Andrew Guaz.
I am here. Thank you.
Vice Chair Julian Drix.
Here, thank you.
Catherine Van Amberg. Catherine is absent. Carlos Garcia. Carlos is absent. Jesus Halquin. Jesus is absent. Priscilla De La Cruz.
Here. Thank you.
Kumba. And Vatic is absent. You have 4 present, 3 absent. You do not have a quorum.
Did you call Amelia? Amelia did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Amelia Rose.
I'm here.
Okay, so you have 4 present and 4 absent.
Awesome.
Does that constitute a quorum?
No, you need more than half.
Okay, so still no quorum. I'm sorry, Amelia.
That's okay. Thank you. I think Carlos and Catherine might be joining in a few minutes. I just shot them a note, so hopefully we see them in a few, but we do have quite a full agenda. So let's get started. And first, I just want to say right before this call started, Sean swore in Priscilla as finally an official member of the ESTF. So that was very exciting. First Zoom swearing in I've seen. And I'll just read through the agenda real quick. You all should have it in your inboxes, but just so folks and members of the public, it's available on the city's portal, but I'll read through it real quick just so folks know what's coming up today. Oh my gosh, suddenly it just got really big on my computer. It's better now. First, we're going to do some updates on resolutions and ordinances that have been supported by ESTF. There's been a lot of really exciting updates in the last couple weeks. I'm going to do some updates on the city. Oh, that's the city compensation ordinance. Oops, and I totally approved of this agenda, but that's a slight typo. We're going to talk about the ordinance that went to the, or are we? I think that's a slight typo on my part. We're going to do some updates from ECRI, the Environment Council of Rhode Island. We're going to have updates on ongoing projects from the Office of Sustainability. And then the kind of meat or the tofu of our conversation will be on the metrics discussion from the Office of Sustainability related to implementing the sustainability plan and the climate justice plan. And we'll have some quick discussion at the end on future meeting agendas and any upcoming related community events related to sustainability, as well as some opportunities for public comment. And as always, during the meeting, if members of the public have questions or comments, they can raise their hand. And when we get through the task force members, we will look to questions and comments from members of the public. I also want to acknowledge that Carlos just joined us. Thanks, Carlos. So let's get started. Updates on resolutions and ordinances supported by the ESTF. So I'll get started and I might then look at you, Leah, for any things that I miss or get wrong. But a lot has happened in the last month. It's been super exciting, you guys. So at our last meeting, we supported a few things. So one was we discussed that the City Council, Councilwoman Anthony, would be introducing 2 ordinances related to implementing the climate justice plan. One was recognizing the goals of the climate justice plan, as well as creating kind of the Office of Sustainability within ordinance, as well as making updates to this body here. That was introduced at the end of January, as well as the Building Energy Reporting Ordinance, or Bureau, also introduced at that same City Council meeting at the end of January. Since then, and just to update, and I think some folks around the table know, so there was really widespread support for that introduction. Over 200 letters were sent to members of City Council. Every member of City Council got at least one letter. One just only got one, but some got over 40, or over 30. Every member got at least one telling them that they supported both ordinances and looked forward to them moving quickly. And then at that city council hearing or meeting, pardon me, the city council introduction, it wasn't open for public comment. So members of the public signed in as "I support climate justice" as their name. And Council President Matos encouraged other council members to look at the long list of folks who had signed in with that name as the ordinances were being introduced. So it was a really exciting and kind of innovative way for people to show support for those ordinances. And we had also supported those and sent letters in support of those ordinances. And since then, they both got referred to Finance Committee, which was interesting. And since then, the Bureau ordinance, the Building Energy Reporting Ordinance, did have its initial hearing is the wrong word, but it was heard at the Finance
Committee meeting.
Yes, thank you. It had its first committee meeting and will be they will be putting up notice for it to have a public hearing, which is when there will be opportunity for public comment. Hopefully much in support of that. And so we again had over 200 letters to council people who were submitted to the public record as part of that. And so Sean has confirmed that those have been entered into public record, and I will let folks know as soon as I know that it's been publicly noticed as a public hearing. Leah, what have I missed? Oh yeah, also there's the resolutions, which you can talk a little bit about as well.
Sure, and then I just actually have a question perhaps for the clerk's office. The public hearing requires 20 days notice, is that correct? For posting?
For this, it's for 10, I believe, but I'll double
10.
check.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that'll be good to know. So we'll try to get that and schedule as soon as we can. I believe it's at the discretion of the Finance Committee Chair.
That is correct.
Okay. So still time to get out the word about that policy and show support. Also, I would just note that Sue mentioned this, but it's worth emphasizing that the other ordinance has not gone to committee yet, so we can't lose sight of that one as well. So really, really good movement on that on the benchmarking ordinance. So for the two resolutions were the one on composting and environmentally preferred purchasing. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily just to provide a quick update on that front, if that's all right, Emily.
Sure. So the environmentally preferable purchasing policy resolution passed in January, and I would love to pull up today's newsletter. Actually, that was my helpful summary of what occurred.
And a reminder to everyone to be signing up for the newsletter.
Well, I'll do without it. We have been working with the purchasing department to develop a survey that will be distributed to departments across the city. And we've just about finalized that survey. And once we distribute that to departments, our goal is to get a good understanding of existing purchasing and operating practices and opportunities for improvement. And then think citywide about opportunities for bulk procurement and incorporating specifications for environmentally preferable practices for certain product categories based on what we hear from departments and the feasibility of changing certain purchasing practices. So that's exciting that's moving forward pretty quickly. And the idea is that the ordinance will be some kind of workable policy, potentially including specifications and kind of near-term goals that the city thinks that we can work on in regards to purchasing in the coming years, with the ability to also update it as we accomplish things. And then on the composting front, we were able to convene a composting roundtable and are doing another one at the beginning of March to ensure that we are able to incorporate the input of composting haulers and stakeholders from across the city in the development of a residential composting plan. Were there any Leah, would there be anything else you want to add?
The survey that's going on?
Oh, yes. And under our contractor, Ainsley, through Zero Waste Providence, is helping us develop that plan. And part of that is distributing a composting survey to residents around Providence to get a good understanding of existing composting around the city and what people currently do with their food waste and interest in everything.
Yeah, so you can find that survey in our newsletter, which just went out today. It will also be posted on our website and Facebook page later this week. So any help getting the word out with that survey would be much appreciated, and it's available in Spanish and English.
Leah and Emily, do you know, I know a bunch of the city council members have like newsletters that they send out, like some of them pretty regularly. Are they going to include a link to that, or is that something that we should request that they stick it in there?
We can it'd be great to request that. I'll include it in our intergovernmental affairs newsletter. So we send information at the end of I provide information at the end of the week for the email that goes out to our delegation, and I can include it there, so that might prompt them to help disseminate. But yeah, any other requests to include it and get the word out would be great.
Awesome. One thing I'll add real quick that I realized looking at my notes, I realized I forgot. So for the building energy reporting ordinance, just one thing to share. So in addition to more than 200 Providence residents supporting the Bureau ordinance and the other ordinance, but as well as there's a newsletter, or no, I'm sorry, my brain is like not working, a PDF document of support from organizations. A letter of support was also submitted by the Providence Foundation, which represents some of the biggest building owners downtown in support of the Bureau ordinance, which is a really, really big deal in a positive way. So I wanted to make sure the task force and members of the public knew that as well. That's a really fantastic development that I know Councilwoman Anthony, as well as Leah and Rob and the team, worked really hard with them to make that happen. Any questions? Cool. I'm also going to point out, we had originally been hoping or thinking we might have a composting presentation at today's meeting. Because there's so much happening, we wanted to make sure that we had reserved time for the discussion of all of these like upcoming events and things that are moving. It's kind of a lot, you guys. It's really exciting. I just want to make sure everybody realizes how exciting it is. But we'll have that at a future meeting. And it'll align really well with the great work that Emily and the team are doing. It does look like we have a question from Doug. Is it possible to take him off mute?
Sure. I can unmute him or promote him to the panelists, whatever you choose, Chair.
We can just unmute him.
Okay. He's been unmuted.
Awesome. Doug, do you have a question or comment?
I do. Thank you so much. You know, every time I sign in and to this task force, now committee, I just celebrate. It just brightens up my entire day. You folks are just doing such great work, and it's going to have a very broad impact. And so I just, first of all, I want to say thank you, and I want to say that you're helping to improve my mental health in the middle of this COVID. Anyways, so I would like, might I suggest that I'd like to know specifically how we can support. And I wonder if also, if there could be something sent to the Providence Coalition of Neighborhood Associations for them to send out, for Liza Birkin, who's coordinating, to send something out to all the neighborhood associations across the city to enlist their support with that, because I think there's a big piece there that is really important to connect with. We have some very vital work going on the grassroots level. So that I'm going to suggest that. And I wonder, when there is official business of a sustainability business that is a conversation that is more located in specific neighborhoods and other neighborhoods of the city, if you folks might think about inviting the neighborhood associations or letting them know so that they could put the word out to the neighborhood groups so that there can be representation at the table from the neighborhood. There can be comments. There might even, you might even have a special way for neighborhood association to become part of that conversation, even more than raising a hand and having, although you folks are really great at responding, I think you're doing something that some other people aren't doing quite as openly, maybe, and welcomingly. When citizens come on and want to be active, we want to have a voice, and it's very difficult to have a voice. And we just had three things that have been coming up, and one is the St. Joe's rezoning. We didn't find out about any of that until we read it in the paper, and we didn't even know that it was going to be going through the ordinance committee until somebody saw it by happenstance and contacted me. So I was then able to sort of marshal some community voice around this. This is coming up on Wednesday in the ordinance committee. The other is, I don't know if you're aware, but electronic billboards is coming up in the ordinance committee also on Wednesday evening. And I think electronic billboards, is there a place for electronic billboards in our historic city? What might be the light distraction, safety, pollution, neighborhood business? They're talking about 3 coming in. One is going to be coming into the Washington Park sort of neighborhood if it gets approved. And the other is the Columbus statue has been deaccessioned by the new, I don't know if it's a task force or a committee, I'm not quite sure at this point. Again, without ever notifying the neighborhood, the Elmwood neighborhood, the Reservoir Triangle neighborhood, the West End neighborhood, the neighborhoods who deserve really to have more of a process and a say before something is kind of taken away, and so I was a voice for that at that meeting, but it was still deassessed without the neighborhood really being informed that meeting was happening, and that's problematic. So please help to set the standard, a new standard for neighborhood engagement, and I don't mean to take up so much time. And the other piece is also, how might you connect with Providence being listed, the city of Providence being listed by PPS as the most endangered property? Think about that, please. Thank you so much. I will lower my hand now.
Thank you, Doug. Those are all really important points. And we brought up the neighborhood associations before. That's a really good point. And I'll make a point to connect with Liza. I forgot that she was the main point of contact there now. And I think those are some great ideas.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Any other task force members have questions or comments? Great. The next thing on the agenda, and I have a typo here, and that's my apologies, is around the sustainability edits to the comp plan. And at our last meeting, we voted to support the changes that the Office of Sustainability was recommending into the comprehensive plan. That was heard by the CPC, which, why am I forgetting what that acronym stands for? The City Plan Commission. Thank you. Just gonna drink some tea. That was heard by the City Plan Commission, and we submitted comments, and I also had spoken comments, as did Priscilla in her seat as chair of ECRI. I just want to say Leah did a really fantastic job at that meeting, describing the changes and responding to questions. The commission decided they needed more time, and so they'll be scheduling a future meeting to further discuss those edits. And I hope that we continue to support the inclusion of the climate justice plan components that were in the recommendation that we reviewed last time to continue, like we'll continue in that process to ensure that they get added to the comprehensive plan. Leah, do you have anything to add from that?
Just that the next step would be a public hearing of the City Plan Commission to review the updates.
Yeah. And so that'll be a great time to ensure that members of the public also know that that is being heard then and can offer their support for it to be included in the comprehensive plan. Awesome. So that was just a quick update so people knew where that was. It's been a busy month, you guys. It's very exciting. So kudos to Leah and her team. Priscilla, can you give us some quick updates from ECRI, please?
And so brief updates. First, a few meetings are coming up. The first full board meeting of the month for the following month is on March 1st. So ECRI's meeting virtually between 5:30 to 7, and we post that information on the website, on the Environment Council of Rhode Island's website. And then the following week, our political/policy committee meets. So that would be March 8th from 4:30 to 6. So around this time of year when the General Assembly is convening to introduce and hear legislation, that ends up being a really critical time period for this policy committee within the Environment Council of Rhode Island. So really what the 90 minutes consist of for that meeting is like reviewing bills and just deciding our position on them. And that's to make a recommendation to the full board on March 1st. And that process goes on for a couple of months throughout the legislative period. So the executive committee is now meeting on Tuesdays, March 9th. That's between 5 to 6. It is the executive committee's time to sort of discuss operations, but it is also welcome to the public. And then the second update is that our equity-based strategic planning process is moving forward. We're going through the very lengthy process, but rewarding process of reviewing proposals. We had our first 2 initial interviews, just sort of narrowing down the consultants that we might potentially work with to start that strategic planning process. So we're learning a lot, and hopefully we can make a decision about which consultant to work with in the coming weeks. Let's see, and then the final update is that we are close to setting a date for our legislative coffee hour, which usually happens in the end of January, but because this is an unusual legislative session that's happening virtually and delayed, and then the transition at some point from Governor Raimondo to Lieutenant Governor McKee, we've postponed it, but we are looking at doing a very brief coffee hour, either March 9th, March 10th, or March 11th. And it would be between 8:30 in the morning and 9:30 in the morning. And the goal would be just to briefly bring folks together and dive into a few different topics like transportation, environmental justice, climate, and energy in breakout sessions, and interact with legislators just to hear their thoughts and to also share some of the bills that the group is considering to support or oppose. That's all I've got.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. That's all you got is like so much. You guys are doing so much. It's so awesome. I also just want to acknowledge that Jesus has joined. Hey, Jesus.
Hey, y'all.
Thanks for being here. Awesome. Any questions or comments for Priscilla on the Environment Council of Rhode Island update? Cool. Moving right along then. The next update, the next 2 items are the updates on ongoing projects from the Office of Sustainability, as well as the metrics discussion from the Office of Sustainability. So we can just like roll from one right into the other. If Leah and Emily and Rob, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, I can start, and I'll be quick, so we have plenty of time for the metrics conversation. So I'll just mention a couple things. One, the community choice aggregation program is going to be heard, our plan, Providence's plan, it will be heard by the PUC on March 25th at 1 p.m. It will be live streamed. I'm happy to share that link, Sue. I believe you already have the information. We can share that out. Still no firm date on when they would schedule a vote to approve the plan, but it's moving forward slowly but surely. And then our Green Justice Zone work with the Racial Environmental Justice Committee is also moving forward. We've been meeting with DEM and cohort members from the community, both in community members from Olneyville and the South Providence area. And last week we did we hosted the REJC hosted a Undoing Racism training with members of DEM and community members. So that was really great. Great to see it virtually, and I was able to join for a good chunk of it, as was Rob, and it was a really valuable experience. So that work is moving along. It's funded from some funding from the Office of Sustainability, a grant, as well as DEM, and we're hoping that that can be extended into the next year, because I believe the funding wraps up in the spring. And then lastly, I would just mention, Rob has taken the lead on restarting the Repower PVD program and reconnecting with participants there. So these are building owners that have committed to a 25 I always get the numbers mixed up, 25% reduction in energy by 2030, I believe, and something like that. And so we're convening, meeting with them later this week, and to get some, share some progress and how we're moving forward, and the support that the building owners have to help them meet those goals. There also, just as a reminder, is a Race to Zero component of that program. So there's a handful of buildings enrolled in the race to become the first zero energy building in Providence. So that's really exciting. Rob, Emily, did you want to add anything before we turn it over to Emily for the metrics?
Perhaps that we continue to work on plastic bag education and enforcement. We have printed about 1,000 cards to offer to residents. We have a few outreach channels. Amelia, I can get these cards to you for your green team in the spring, and some of the libraries are sending home take-home bags. So if you have outlets where we could let young people and adults know that the plastic bag ban is still a thing, and to let us know if anyone is not aware, and we can bring everyone into compliance. We will be proceeding with enforcement in the coming weeks and months, which will be primarily complaint-based, based on capacity, but we'd like to make sure that, especially with the upcoming statewide plastic bag ban, we'd really like to make sure that all of Providence is in compliance with our ordinance before a state ban goes into effect. That could have much better impact and higher fees. So.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Emily. Just one note on that as well. If you are out running errands or shopping in Providence and you see a store with plastic bags, please help us provide information about the policy. And it's always nice for them to hear from a resident and not the city that, hey, just so you know, I hear the city is going to be enforcing this soon. We really don't want to see you get a fine. Just any help in that education and outreach would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah,
anonymous complaints are also welcome. Like if you don't feel comfortable bringing it up, but you're like, I'm really bummed that my neighborhood bodega is offering plastic bags, we can follow up with a phone call to educate them and then a visit.
Emily or Leah, is there a place where those cards exist? Like if there is some business in our neighborhood that I'm thinking of one in particular that I've talked to about it, and they give me a nice little talk about how plastic bags are better. And I was like, no, you're going to get fined. And like, I'm trying to help you, bud. but I think if I had some like actual, like something to hand them, but I don't have a printer is the problem. So if other folks are in that space, is there a place where they can come pick stuff up? No pressure if not.
The cards are really more for like residents or that so like remember to bring your own bag. And for retailers, I've been visiting with the one pager about the plastic bag ban and the kind of which is from when it first came out, and then a more recent kind of like what's allowed and what's not allowed. That breaks down the confusion around, or just really the definition of stitched handle. I've been dropping those off. I had considered soliciting the support of the task force to make those kinds of drop-offs, but because of the pandemic, it didn't feel great encouraging really anyone to do in-person visits. That said, I have all the materials that if someone wants to pick up a few for your regular errands, I'm happy to get those to folks.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. I might just follow up with you offline. I also think if Clerk, if you wouldn't, Sean, if you wouldn't mind, I think Doug is still unmuted and I'm not sure if he can mute himself, but it keeps popping up. Can we remute him? Sorry, Doug. Thanks. I also just wanted to add, sorry I'm being so talkative today, but Leah mentioned the PUC will be hearing about community choice aggregation on the 25th. That's after our next meeting. So Leah and I talked about having the consultant who we're working with Good Energy come and give us a little update potentially at our next meeting on the 22nd of March. So just wanted to flag that. And I have the information about that PUC meeting, which I'll send to you after this. I didn't want to send it ahead of time and have you be like, what is, I'm so confused. So that'll be a follow-up to this meeting. So you guys have that if you want to watch.
Rob, did you want to add anything?
Oh, I just can report that I updated the Repower PVD website with the new participants that joined last year, which was a crazy year. So if you lost track of who joined the campaign, it's understandable. But Johnson Wales University and Rising Sun Mills are also in the campaign. And the report, which comes out later this year, will include all the 2019 and 2020 data so we can see how everyone's doing. Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to point out, in addition to the Providence Foundation, the Providence Preservation Society also endorsed Bureau. So.
Great, thank you. All
Any
right,
questions?
Emily, unless folks have questions, should turn it over to Emily.
I just
Go
had,
ahead, Emily.
I
Oh,
just had one
Amelia,
question. Yeah, sorry. I just had one quick question about the reminder cards. One thing we had discussed is whether we could use the reminder card to post on social media also, or like put on our website or something. Is that still possible?
Yes, I have social media graphics for you and everyone. Thank you to the mayor's design team.
If you send those to me, Emily, I can send them to the whole task force. Thank you.
All right, so I believe I'm going to be sharing my screen to share Emily's slides. Is that right?
That would be great if you have the ability to.
Host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you change that?
You should be.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean. So this is a conversation on metric alignment and reporting, which may be a bit of an overview of some things we discussed last August, but I thought it would be helpful to provide a big picture of where we've been and lead into a discussion of the dashboard and annual reporting for the Sustainability Office moving forward.
And Emily, will you please email this to me as soon as you finish presenting? Thank you.
Yes. So here's a
I'll do that right now, Sean.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks.
Here's a timeline of Providence's sustainability vision and reporting goals. So the Sustainable Providence Plan was released in 2014. In 2015, the mayor announced that this would include a greenhouse gas reduction goal. And the resulting update was sent to the mayor and city council in December of 2016, following the release of the sustainability, followed by the release of the dashboard in 2017. In the following years, Providence developed our vision for a low carbon future, which centers frontline communities, which, as we know, culminated in the release of the Climate Justice Plan in 2019. And just this past year, we worked on doing a data audit of the Sustainable Providence Plan and the Climate Justice Plan and metric prioritization. So next slide. The first progress report that I kind of traced the origin of our most recent progress reports from 2016 to 2019. And this was an annual update of the highest priority actions of the Sustainable Providence Plan. So the subsequent Sustainable Providence progress reports, which is an annual report that the Office of Sustainability has given to the Sustainability Task Force and also formally submitted to the City Council, has mirrored the structure of this 2016 update on the left, which categorizes actions in each topic area as completed, in progress, ongoing, on hold, or past due if it hasn't been dealt with in 2 years or more. So on the left here is the original structure that we continued to follow for the years that followed, that broke down the categories, so waste, food, water, and so on. And then for each highest priority action, we provided a narrative and categorized them based on action status. And last year, in an effort to understand the meaning of these action statuses, we provided these definitions, particularly because I thought there was some gray area between the difference of whether an action was in progress or ongoing. Okay, and next slide. So each year, our list of highest priority actions evolved. Some were revised or updated, others were labeled as past due if they were not addressed for 2 or more years. New actions were also added to each category, and each annual report aimed to highlight the completed actions as well as other significant progress made. It's a pretty large number, 70 to 80 high priority actions that we've been tracking. In our 2019 progress report, we compared so this was after we had released the Climate Justice Plan and we're dealing with these 2 pretty distinct plans. We compared the Climate Justice Plan priority strategies to the highest priority actions that we'd been tracking through the years in the Sustainable Providence Plan. We acknowledge that the release of the Climate Justice Plan represented a new vision and committed to doing a more comprehensive comparison and alignment of the goals, strategies, and targets of these 2 plans in order to streamline performance metrics and reporting. So our first step was to, you can go to that graphic actually.
Sorry, what slide would you like?
So our first step was to consolidate the categories of the Sustainable Providence and Climate Justice Plans. With the exception of lead by example, our new categories are primarily the same as the Climate Justice Plan. So zero waste and the development of the food sector became captured within local and regenerative economy. An expanded section of community and environmental health becomes inclusive of water, as well as cultivating a healthy food environment. We eliminated land use and development, but maintained the new sections of collaborative governance and housing and buildings. Next slide. So this is just high level comparison of how the data is presented in both plans. So the vision in Sustainable Providence is called a goal, whereas the vision in the Climate Justice Plan is called an objective. And both plans offer strategies to provide actions and steps towards achieving those goals or objectives with different levels of specificity. So the Sustainable Providence Plan offered these highest priority actions that we really grasped onto to measure our progress, while the Climate Justice Plan offered key stakeholders and implementation timeline for those strategies. And the difference is the Sustainable Providence Plan offered metrics to measure our goal, whereas the Climate Justice Plan offered targets. So I've defined those here. The targets really provide specific outcomes that we would use metrics to make progress towards, if that makes sense. So part of this alignment was figuring out and aligning different target and metric pairs and making sure that all of the ideas of both plans were consolidated into the same categories. Next slide. As you may recall, last summer, our intern, Ellie Madsen, conducted a data audit and presented these results to you all. Our goal was to capture and align the targets and metrics from both plans, as well as the existing dashboard within our new categories, which are listed here, including ensuring that each target has a corresponding metric. Often they have multiple metrics, or the metric is still in development as to how we're going to measure something. And also ensuring that each metric has a larger, each metric and kind of initiative that we're working on has a larger target that lives somewhere. And so in November and December, a subcommittee of this task force convened to prioritize which target metric pairs for each category should be tracked on the dashboard, as well as reported annually. Next slide. So I just wanted to share our kind of big picture factors for prioritization, give an example of one of those categories, and then open it up for discussion. So factors for prioritizing which targets and metrics will be tracked immediately has a lot to do with, of course, centering frontline communities and greatest impacts, particularly the equity-focused targets that have historically been ignored and were established in the Climate Justice Plan. Alignment with current initiatives and capacity, of course. Having data that is readily available and that we are currently able to establish a baseline for and track quantitatively. There are a number of goals and targets which at this stage are not yet quantitative and seem appropriate to merge in and provide narrative updates in the short term. And then, of course, prioritizing those targets which are in the more near term, as well as ensuring, which you probably got a sense from the categories, that ensuring that we have a few targets in each category and are addressing the breadth of sustainability. Next slide. So if from both plans and the dashboard, we consolidated targets and goals that were aligned or repetitive. If we were perhaps still perhaps determining how to establish a baseline or to track the data. If we feel like we're far enough from accomplishment and don't feel like we're going to see progress in the near term and could perhaps account for something in a narrative update. Some remnants of the Sustainable Providence Plan may have encountered barriers and are no longer a top priority and would be removed. For some, we may not be the driving party, or perhaps the metrics are being tracked actively by other departments or organizations. And I think I mentioned whether or not the metrics are possible to gain data for at this point. And for a few, we may have already accomplished them or we're past the date that they were due. So just as an example, housing and buildings is one category, and this is a list of the complete list of targets that Ellie came up with, which was easier for this one because it was primarily sourced from the Climate Justice Plan. And it's worth noting that for each target, there's also a list of more than one metric that would be used to track progress towards this target. Next slide. I've just highlighted through the process that our subcommittee went through in November and December, the handful of targets that we feel we're ready to track beginning in 2021, both as part of our annual reporting and as part of the dashboard. And so for each category, we landed on between 3 and 5, which we felt was reasonable based on those factors that I shared. So for example, we selected the near-term heating goal, and we have an immediate metric of measuring the overall gas consumption, but would also seek data on heat pump rebates and installation, as well as potentially amount of delivered fuel throughout Providence. The second bolded target here centers the impact, centering impact demands that we prioritize low-income energy burden. And here we've selected the measuring the low-income energy burden using some outside data tools, and still kind of strategizing how we would work towards and track the utility shutoffs, which right now does not seem particularly near term. Housing and anti-displacement metrics is an example of a target that is being tackled pretty directly by our planning department with their comprehensive housing plan. Next slide. So to frame a discussion, I wanted to talk about, based on where we've been and how we've historically reported on our sustainability goals, I foresee that we would structure both our annual report and our dashboard around these new consolidated categories, and the selection of 3 to 5 targets in each category. And that would be the basis for both the dashboard and the annual report. I think it will be a constant balancing of presenting the target. There will be a good amount of narrative of how we go about establishing metrics and progress towards getting to that target. And then the dashboard hopefully will have some quantitative data that might be interactive to support our progress towards those targets. I would love to discuss whether or not we want to do an action status again for the annual report, defining our progress or lack of progress, and having a mechanism of like flagging if we haven't worked on something in some time. I would propose that each year, because we went through this prioritization, each year we would revisit the full list of targets and metrics and assess whether or not something new should be added or something should be removed if it's less of a priority. But overall, it is just kind of a pretty large list, and just figuring out how to prioritize as an office will be important every year. Yeah, so I would, sorry if that wasn't a great launch, but I would love to hear from the task force about how you would like to see the dashboard presented, as well as how you would like the annual report, how you could see that structured based on the wide range of targets and metrics that we have before us.
Thanks, Emily. And I would just provide some, I guess, additional kind of framing and kind of getting back to like why this is so important. I understand you might feel like this is really in the weeds, but we do put a lot of time and energy into transparency and accountability and making sure that you all and the public are aware of what we're working on and what we're not working on and how we're prioritizing. And we also want to have some check on, are our strategies helping us are we making progress towards our goals? We have our goals, we know where we want to be in the future, and we're doing a lot of work to get there. Is that work effective? And is it the right set of strategies that will really move the needle on outcomes that we want to see in the future? So really just appreciate your feedback on this process and help us make the best use of our time as we do report. We want to make sure that the information we're providing to you all and to the public is useful and helps you understand what it is that we're doing and how we can improve and make progress.
If task force members have comments or questions, feel free to jump in. I apologize, my internet connection got a little unstable, so I'm sorry if I've turned my video off, but I'm still here.
I don't really have any comments, but want to congratulate you on coming up with something and going through this big process to consolidate everything. And do you have like a final report of some kind for us to look at other than the PowerPoint?
No, I think that, it's about time to get you the next annual report for 2020, and perhaps we can just try it based on the current targets and then get feedback from you all on how that structure works, and whether it will be a similar kind of like very large table chart as it has been in previous years, or if like a narrative would be easier to take in.
Probably some kind of mix. I don't know, charts are useful, but not if there's 84 things, but narratives can get long in a way that you ignore things that are key. So
I agree with that. I like the mix idea, especially so the narrative can really cover or highlight the things you want to draw our attention to. And thank you for doing this and taking the time. It definitely, it's in the weeds and could be tedious, but I really appreciate y'all doing this. I think it's really useful to know how the two plans are similar and where they differ and how we're going to track things and really get at reaching those targets.
I was going to shout out Amelia and Priscilla and Sue and Catherine and there was one other person who's not currently in the room that was the subcommittee that each tried to tackle this prioritization. I was just going to mention that it's pretty tough to the action statuses, like judging whether something is complete or in progress versus on hold is I could see how it's helpful of like flagging things that we're not working on that we should be working on, but it also last year when I first filled out the report, it didn't feel super helpful at the time to put that judgment on it. And if something's on hold, then I think that should be taken out of the report as opposed to kind of, or as an addendum of like all of the targets that we're not currently reporting on.
To that point, Emily, it might be helpful in a report if things get called out of like, this is on hold because like we lack capacity to do it, or like if there are things that like a task force or members of the public could be helping to advocate, like if you're like, oh, we would be doing this, but like we need to hire a new whatever, new person, or it'd be great if we had funding for a consultant to help us do X, Y, and Z or whatever, like flagging areas that like we're not doing because we need more resources. If there are things that we should be helping to advocate for, that might be helpful. Like, we would do this, y'all. This is really important, but here's the ordinance we need to do it, or the X, Y, and Z, since you guys are living it every day. But I also want to agree with Amelia and Priscilla. This is really impressive and will really help us. Will really help like move this work forward. And sorry, my connection's still unstable. I'm like trying, y'all. I don't know what's going on. I blame the rain. Other comments or questions?
Just perhaps another question to put out to you all is, based on what I guess regardless of what we've read in the past, like what sort of information would you want to see on an annual basis to like really understand how we're doing, and like based on different audiences, right? There's you all who I would imagine are willing to like dive in a little bit more, but then there's also like, what do we share with the public, and how do we do that in a useful way, and what do you think is important for the average resident to know about our work, and what's the best way to communicate that?
Yes, and seeing this kind of like in the weeds presentation, the subcommittee had talked about how to come back to the task force with this information, and as well as solicit feedback from the RJC and other community groups of how things are prioritized. It seems specific to the task force because we're reporting to you all, but I agree with Leah's comments on how do we get and what do we get out to the public.
Yeah, I definitely just want to uplift everything everyone else has said. Like, definitely thank you for putting in that work and creating that and making it digestible. I feel like for me, something that really stuck out was the piece around the metrics. How like for every metric you had like that opposing one that like, or like opposite one. And so like, I feel like I would really want to see how that specifically plays out.
Yeah, I could share the a larger spreadsheet that Ellie put together that lists all of the targets and all of the metrics before they were prioritized. And or there's so many different versions of the spreadsheet, and or I think one of the more digestible versions of it is simply the list of all targets and then highlighting which ones are we're proposing that prioritize for 2021.
And I definitely don't mind bringing it back to REJC to get more thoughts on it.
That'd be great. Thanks, Jesus. Yeah, it's really challenging. There's a lot of important work in the Sustainable Providence Plan and the Climate Justice Plan, and a lot of different ways to track our progress. And we could spend a lot of time just trying to track and measure what we're doing, and that wouldn't leave enough time for the actual doing of the work. So both are important, and we're trying to find the balance. And that's a big part of why we're bringing this to you all, to help us navigate that.
I'll just throw out there a few random thoughts. Oh, sorry. Chair Admiral, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead, Priscilla, please.
So a few random thoughts. I think we talked about this in the working group, sort of like the importance of the dashboard and how to use it. Like if it's going to be more public facing, because I think beyond the great communications that are put out there in terms of the newsletter, the Sustain PVD newsletter, and the social media, like figuring out other tools that we could have for the more public facing things, especially as like members of this committee would be useful. So maybe that's, I don't know if that's like a conversation, Emily, that you and Leah, that you still want us to have, just to like figure out how to use the dashboard if it's going to be more public facing. And then, because that could be like where to devote the energy for the public facing versus like a report that usually is not really like as user friendly as we want to make it. It's not something that I would envision like community members really using, besides having like a short summary version of it. And I lost my other random thought, but when it comes back, I will share it. Oh, I got it back. It's thinking about, like, I think maybe something that could be interesting for us when thinking about whether it's like the report and that mix of what Amelia suggested of like a table and the narrative. It's also like knowing that there are aspects of the climate justice plan, for example, or even both plans that call for state involvement and for partners, like what are the sort of gaps or what needs to be more amplified at the state level? I think that is something that's pretty interesting too. Like knowing like the city has its goals, its targets, there's things that are going to be hopefully institutionalized within municipal laws, but like where are the gaps? Where do we need to push harder as Providence community members for things to happen at the state level?
Yeah, I think that's a great point about how to actually use the public dashboard, because it will take a significant amount of work to really populate as many metrics as we commit to tracking. And if it's not actually that user friendly, I'm not sure how much of our capacity is really worth putting towards that. As much as I love the idea of having all of our data on every category fully populated, it's a lot of work. And another thing that comes to mind in terms of like usability, in our newsletters since about last summer, we've been trying to bite off chunks of the climate justice plan and lay out objectives and specific like updates on how we're doing on a particular category and actions that residents can take to help us towards those objectives in the climate justice plan. And I feel like more things like that on the website that help relate the larger goals and objectives to what people can do now. It's very similar to the Sustainable Providence Plan's what you can do section. So we always kind of strive to connect that to what people can do. But I think that would be a different way of approaching a dashboard.
I'm gonna pop in real quick. I really appreciate everything everybody's been saying, and I also just want to add extra support to, like, I think Emily, you did a really great job of highlighting like the top few metrics per section, and any sort of like public facing thing, maybe like really digging in on just those top ones, because I agree like 80 things is way too many. But like if there's like the top 3 or 2 that really show that each section is moving along, that might be more helpful. I don't know. And apologies again that my connection is weird. I'm listening on my phone, so I can hear everything that's happening.
I was just gonna add.
Any other comments from task force members?
I have one comment. I think that just as speaking as someone who works at a nonprofit, I think one of the things that we look for is data to support programs that we run. And so that's just another different audience potentially of the date of the dashboard and of all this information. So having public facing stuff that, right, I think regular residents want to just see what is the city working on, what are some top priorities, and what are like the trends of, are we improving on this? Are we not? Are we at a standstill, or like that type of thing? And then for people who want to dig in more, including people who want like the outreach or engagement, then having that. Oh, great. Sorry, my daughter just came in. She has an ice cream dress, so that's good. Hi. But just making sure that that data is also publicly available in some kind of report format that people can access.
That's a great point. Some kind of inventory or like make of every data request we've received, and therefore which data organizations or the public would like to continue to have available to them.
I think about like how I look for a lot for state level data from the Department of Health or from Department of Environmental Management. They have so many reports that you can look at, but all of them are helpful to just, even if you're not reading everything, you're going to the part that you need to learn about a community or what's going on.
Any other comments from members of the task force? I see we have a few members of the public with their hand up, but I want to make sure any task force members get their questions out. Okay, seeing no one come off mute. Can we let Linda Perry please off mute?
Linda can unmute herself and she'll be able to speak.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I have a question for the task force and for Julian, if he's still here. There is the gasification plant that is being discussed in West Warwick, East Greenwich with the state reps. I think Rep Bennett is chairing. And I heard and I saw actually that Rep Serpa and other reps are against it. Does anybody know about this? And do they have an opinion? Because I was thinking an opinion from you might be helpful. And I'm afraid that if it goes in, then they're going to try and do something in Providence and, on Allen's Avenue. And I know that Councilman Espinal put through a resolution and it resulted in an ordinance to remove any burning facilities in Providence that were 400 degrees. And I don't know if that is this gasification plant kind of guised, falsely proposed as an energy company. If anybody has an opinion about that and that in.
And Linda, I'm just going to interject real quick. So we're at the part of the agenda talking about the metrics piece. So if there's any comments or questions, particularly about the metrics piece, I think that's the part where we are.
Well, I listened to the metrics piece, and I think that having it there as a tool for neighborhood associations to, reach in and see what's going on various levels and where it is and stages. If one could learn how to navigate through it, that would be helpful. It would eliminate phone calls to a lot of different people. Yeah, so I think Emily, you did a great job. I could never do it. And there's so many moving parts that I know it's all it's a fluid document. That was my comment about that. But I thought we were done. I'm sorry to kind of mess up your schedule, but that was the one of the important things I was concerned about was the gasification and your opinion on it. So
Awesome. Thank you so much,
mhm.
Linda. I think we'll see if there's any more public comments specifically on the metrics piece. And then we have some time set at the end for overall just questions or comments. But thank you for noting that.
Oh, okay. Thank
about
you.
the gasification facility. It looks like Michael Bradley and then Doug. And again, specifically about the metrics piece.
Michael
my
Bradley
name's
can
Mike
unmute.
Bradley. Hi, my name is Mike Bradley. I'm a resident of Providence, and I also run the Community Compost Depot and was part of the Providence Compost pilot program for establishing citywide community-based composting around Providence. When the Providence Compost was put on hold in 2015, and in the subsequent report, the sustainability update of 2016, it was reported that it was put on hold because there was a lack of funds, but it was also added that the program was put on hold because after speaking to contractors, it was determined that it wasn't scalable. So I was one of those contractors, and I was actually never consulted on whether it was scalable or not. My business was based on the scalability of community composting, which is my business and profession. I'm a developer, designer, scientist, and engineer that does scale up for processes anywhere from institutions and industrial processes. And so this was right up my alley. When that report came out, it was quite devastating to my program and also to my stature within the community. I tried to contact the sustainability office as well as reach out to the task force to report this and to seek some way to address how that was reported and make sure that it was updated, because that reporting wasn't accurate. I still to this day haven't been able to have that satisfied. I feel like I've actually been kept at arm's length in trying to address that issue. And really the question is how in the future are you going to ensure that anything that you decide that you develop and implement a program and then you decide to put it on hold, how are you going to ensure that all the stakeholders that are involved in that are thoroughly prepared and aware of your decision to publish something that could be impactful and negatively impact a local business going forward? And also, in that convening time since then, I've composted over 250,000 pounds of organics in the city of Providence. I've also reported that every year and have been asking for those metrics to be added to the dashboard. I think it's really important that the process of how to interact with both the sustainability office and also the task force is well explained to people who wish and try, especially when they consistently try to interact with these offices and to bring valuable information to the community. So if you can answer how are you going to ensure that any conclusions that you draw from a program are reported accurately and with data that sets precedent for your decision, and ensure that you're not hurting future businesses. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Michael. Is that a question, Leah or Emily or Rob? You
So
guys want to start on, or how can I?
I can address that and respond. I remember this conversation, and I believe we did address it, and I appreciated the feedback, Michael, and I believe we did address this in the 2017 update to clarify the status of that program. But I will look back at those records and make sure that we do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Doug, it looks like you also have your hand raised. Sean, would you mind taking Doug off mute, please?
Am I here?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, good. Thank you. So in relationship to the public face and the dashboard, and I think it's really, I almost feel like you folks need a consultant to help you with that, to really understand how to present what you're doing to the community in a way that makes sense for the community to connect with. And there are people out there, and some people may actually be willing to do some pro bono work also. So, but I think that also, I just want to second, how can you get involved? You know, what can you do? So what can John Q. Public and Joan Q. Public do? And I also wonder if there's a possibility for the Office of Sustainability to get an intern who could be the person that would kind of design this and get it up. Anyways, so questions. Thank you. I so appreciate the work.
Thank you so much, Doug. Leah or Emily, do you guys want to respond in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. We do get interns in the summer, as Emily mentioned, one of which was really instrumental in helping us get to this point. At this point, we don't have a budget for a consultant. We have been working with IT, and if you go to this sustainability website, you'll see the current dashboard that we have up there. And so we do have some good tools to work with that the city is already engaged with and in contract with. So we're going to try to work within those constraints for the time being.
Cool. I don't see any other hands raised. Anyone else from the task force, or Emily or Leah or Rob, have final comments on the metrics discussion? Okay, seeing none. The next item on our agenda is future meeting agendas and also any around the table updates on community events or things coming up that the ESTF might want to know about, or members of the public who are with us. So just a little bit of open time for members of the ESTF to share things that are coming up in your world or that you'd like to see on upcoming ESTF agendas.
One thing, this is Amelia here. One thing that I had had a conversation with the consultant who's doing the Providence tree plan the other day, and one thing after that conversation, it made me think to go to the Sustainability Office's webpage and see if what information was about trees on the Sustainability Office page. Noticed that there wasn't a little page dedicated to like tree resources for the city residents. So I just thought that if that's just something that I would like to flag and would be happy to help put together if you don't already have somebody who can do that.
I think the green infrastructure page, we'd aim to link to Providence neighborhood planning programs resources. I don't know if it currently does, but I will definitely check.
Yeah, I don't think it does, but it might.
Thanks, Amelia. That's a good point. Trees are a very cross-cutting issue, so they show up in a lot of different places, but we don't have a dedicated space for that. I'm curious, was there anything in the Parks Department, like the City Forestry Division website? Did you get there?
But I just thought because I really love the composting
Yeah.
there's one that's composting, there's one that's stormwater or green.
Stormwater.
So I feel like people will, if they're looking, they're going to look for something that says trees,
Yeah. No, it's great. Thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Anyone else?
And sorry, so this is for general updates, things going on in our world and things we would like to see for ESTF. Just want to make sure I don't share anything random that I don't want us to share. Okay, so I almost forgot that tomorrow at 7:00 p.m. There is a climate crisis advocate training, and we've done a number through the climate crisis campaign, a project of the Environment Council Rhode Island, along with our member Climate Action Rhode Island. We've hosted a number of climate crisis advocate trainings. Actually, we pulled up one really successfully in person right before the pandemic hit the US, and then we had to cancel the second one. So this is going to be a virtual one tomorrow. And I think there's like about 50 people or so that are registered, but it's free, is open to the public. It's an hour and 15 minutes. It starts at 7. So if you are interested in just learning how legislation moves at the State House, or anyone, or anyone that might be, please pass it on. It's just really the goal of the training is to just get people comfortable with contacting their legislators to talk about climate crisis and to talk about bills that could help us offer solutions to address the climate crisis. And we'll be going through sort of tips for how to navigate the virtual setting that we're in for this legislative session. And I'm trying to find the link and I can't find it. But I don't think it might be like a simple link that I could just say right now out loud, but I can make sure to forward it over to Sue and share it with the group if folks are interested in getting it out there.
Yeah, and Priscilla, I have the link, so I'm happy to, sorry for the double sound. I'm happy to share it with the task force members right after the meeting.
Thanks, Sue.
And any other final updates? I know a few people had a hard stop at 5:30, so I want to respect that. And also, again, apologize that my connection is so bad. Okay, and I don't see any hands raised. Oh wait, I see one hand raised and it's Doug. So Doug, you can have the final word and then we'll adjourn.
Thank you so much. I wonder if, Emily, if we could have a link sent to PCNA for the plastic bag, and that the neighborhood associations who have newsletters can send that out to people. And Priscilla, the training sounds wonderful, and I wonder if there's a way that that could be sent out to PCNA, ASAP, and it just may help to root this this effort more in the neighborhoods. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, happy to do that, and feel free to also email me directly if you want to let me know who's the best person to share it with, so it can get out there quickly. Priscilla, my first name, at greenenergyconsumers.org.
And Doug, if that best person is Liza Birkin, I'm happy to
Yes.
send that link to her as well. I think you mentioned
Thank
earlier
you.
it might be Liza, so I'll send that to Liza too.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you,
I
Doug.
think this is helping to make a bigger circle. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate how you bring that up at meetings. I think we're trying, I just really appreciate that you bring that up, and would love to make sure this is better rooted in each of the communities. Awesome. So knowing that people have to hang up, and I don't want people to just pop off without us formally adjourning, can I have a motion to adjourn? I think we have a full, I think we have quorum, so I think I need a motion. Sean, let me know if that's not true.
That's not true, actually. If there are no other items on the, officially, you're welcome to have a motion because the city council always has a motion. But if there are no other items on the agenda, then the chair is welcome to say, there being no other items on the agenda, I declare this meeting adjourned.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. I've been asking for a motion for like 2 years. Though I am realizing I have there's one more item, and that's relevant public comment. So if anyone has an additional item of relevant public comment, I don't see any hands raised, but want to make sure I said that out loud. Oh, Linda Perry. Last word from Linda Perry.
Hi, does the task force have, oh shit. Okay, does the task force have an opinion on the gasification facility?
Thank you for raising that again, Linda. I hope people can hear me. I think because it's not a Providence issue, it's not something we've raised before since it's currently not happening in Providence, but we can, unless others want to jump in and have a conversation, we can consider this for a future agenda item, especially if there does seem to be a Providence connection. But it would be worth reaching out to see if one of those towns there are a number of towns that have ESTF equivalents. And there are a number of us who are working to kind of better coordinate across the various ESTFs in the communities. So I can commit to seeing if they have one and if this is something that they're bringing up.
It's in committee and they're discussing it at the State House. And other city people are speaking up for or against it. So even though the facility is in East Greenwich, people from Warwick are talking about it. And my feeling is if they open up the door to it, it's going to come to Providence, and they'll try anyway. And we already have a medical waste plastic incinerator business on Allens Avenue that if this goes in, it will expand their business. That's why I was hoping Julian had an opinion as well. But, you know, maybe this is an off-topic discussion or an off-meeting discussion. I appreciate it. And,
No, thank you so much, Linda. And I think also, Priscilla, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was raised as something for an agenda item for the next ECRI meeting. Not true. I think I saw some email traffic about that.
Yeah, I was just trying to multitask and double check that, but at 5:33, I'm not feeling very effective at the moment. But anyhow, I think that there is a sign-on letter that is circulating. I'm trying to get a hold of that letter. I think what is in question is whether it will be on the March 1st agenda for the full ECRI board meeting, or if it has to go to the policy committee first on March 8th. But either way, the topic should be discussed on the March 1st agenda because we cover policy and political updates.
thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you for raising that. That's really important. And I can make sure that the ECRI information for how to sign into that March 1st meeting gets sent to the task force members as well as members of the stakeholder community who get our emails. So that folks, if they want to sign on to that March 1st ECRI conversation, are able to do so.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. And now that we have reached the end of our agenda items, I will hereby adjourn our meeting and hope everyone has a lovely evening.
The power. Thank you so